Hello everyone, a warm welcome back to our HealthTech at Medicon Valley event. We're now about to go into our very first challenge of the day called Moving Towards Predictive and Preventive Health. And a reminder, if you're experiencing any video quality issues or if you would like a better experience on your online stream, please visit Vimeo and you'll find the link in the chat in Zoom. To help us get acquainted with predictive and preventive health, I'd like us to, again, go into Slido for our very first poll of the session. And you'll see it launched on your phone or computer, wherever you logged in. In front of you is the QR code and the website. So our very first question, according to the World Health Organization, what percentage of premature heart disease, stroke, and diabetes could be prevented through lifestyle changes? Is it 20%, 40%, 60%, or 80%? And we see the responses coming in. 80% still looks most popular. Getting some responses for 60, 40, or shifting to 60. Let's give it a few more seconds to see what is the winning answer for this question. What percentage of premature heart disease, stroke, and diabetes could be prevented through lifestyle changes, according to the World Health Organization? All right. So it looks like most are choosing between 60 or 80. And what I'd like to do is to show you the correct answer to this question. And the correct answer is actually 80%. So congrats to the 41% of you who voted right. The very next question we have. On average, what percentage of national healthcare budgets in Europe are spent on preventive measures today? Is it 3 to 5%, 9 to 11%, 13 to 15%, or 21 to 23%? On average, what percentage of national healthcare budgets in Europe are spent on preventive measures? Waiting a few more seconds to see if more responses come in. People are being conservative to say it's either 3 to 5 or 9 to 11. 5 more seconds. 9 to 11 is catching up a little bit. 3 to 5 is still most popular. Fantastic. So let's reveal the correct answer for this question. What percentage of healthcare budgets in Europe are spent on preventive measures? And the answer for this question is, as the majority has guessed correctly, it's 3 to 5%. So to help us to frame this session a bit more, I'd like to invite Tuva Jeksmark. She is the head of innovation at Capio, part of Ramsey Santé, to join me on stage. Warm welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Tuva.
Thank you.
So little reflections on what you just saw in the poll. Did the results surprise you, or did the answer surprise you?
Well, I was a bit surprised by the number of people actually guessing the right answer. Well, unfortunately, I'm not really surprised over the right answers, because this is actually what we see. We know that from research, we know that we should do preventive medicine, but actually from a system perspective, we don't have the systems in place in healthcare to actually work with that question. Like we are spending like less than 20% in Sweden on primary care, and primary care is the most common place to actually work on prevention. So it's, that's the case. We're not doing what we know we should do.
Really interesting. Why is this theme, preventive and predictive health, so important to Capio as a company?
Well, we can see from global trends and from this poll also that the demography is really an issue that we need to take seriously. We see that in the coming 20 years, we will see really an increase in the number of elderly people, and we know that that also increases the burden of disease. So we really need to work on getting those numbers down so that the pressure on the healthcare system will actually ease up.
Yeah.
We also know that we also have a lack of healthcare staff. It could be like GPs, psychologists. We have some staff categories that are really lacking in our system, and also in the geography we could see that we have a lack of skilled professionals, and that lack will actually increase. And unfortunately, we also see that the work environment in healthcare is under pressure, especially now talking about the COVID situation. So we really need to empower people to be able to take care of their own health. Otherwise, the burden will be really heavy on the healthcare system, and that could actually make that those really in need of our system can't get access to it. So we really need to empower patients.
Yeah, and I guess it's tied to this trend that we're seeing, that we as patients also want to be engaged in our own health. So there is an opportunity to be met here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not like we are pushing it over to patients, because most people really want to engage in their health. And actually, if you see a patient with chronic illness will actually maybe just see healthcare like 1 hour in the full year. So all of the other hours, which are quite many, you really need to, and you want to actually make yourself better. So I think that's a wish from the patients as well.
Fantastic. And we are going to shortly hear from 3 companies that have a very innovative approach to supporting individuals in living healthily in a preventive perspective. What are you hoping to hear from the pitches today?
Well, I hope to hear a lot of passion, because I think that passion is really key to drive innovation, because it has challenges. I also hope to see that the companies have really looked into a true need of the patients, so that you really understand what the needs, what are the job to be done, so that they are actually matching something that's really key. So you need to hit that spot where people actually can use the technology available.
Really good. All right. So without further ado, let's shortly welcome our very first pitching company. But for the audience, just a short reminder, there will be opportunities for you to pose questions to Tuva and our speakers. Please use Slido to write your questions to us. After each pitching presentation, we'll have a short time for Q&A, but we'll also have time after the 3 pitches to delve into more questions. So please go to Slido and put in your questions. The very first pitching company, I have a warm pleasure of inviting Anki Malmö, the CEO of Pain Drainer, who will be presenting to us on Pain Drainer, a digital tool to improve the activity balance for chronic pain patients. Welcome, Anki. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So, hi, I'm Anki Malmö. I come from a company called Pain Drainer. And first of all, I would like to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present our first product called Pain Drainer as well. I'll show my first slide. Like you say in your challenge, Tuva, that 3% of spending goes to preventive care, while 80% of the cost relate to chronic disease, and like we just heard as well. With this in mind, I would like you to focus for a while on chronic pain. Did you know that 40% of all primary care visits are due to chronic pain, and that 30% of all sick leave is due to chronic pain? This, of course, is devastating for those patients living with chronic pain, and it affects their everyday life. There are treatments, but the availability is really, really low for those patients. Another perspective is that 60% are afraid of getting addicted to the medication, and 30% are actually opioid abusers. So, for this reason, we have developed Pain Drainer. And Pain Drainer is the first advanced self-management tool for chronic pain based on artificial intelligence. The principle behind it is the same principle as you use in the clinic when treating patients in the rehabilitation. The fact is that pain is related to everything that you do in the day, all your activities that you do, your sleep, your work, your physical activity, etc. The trick is to know which activities are good for you and which activities are not good for you, and will then increase your pain. And this is where a pain trainer comes in and helps you to plan your days. So what you do in this digital tool that you can have in your phone is you log your daily activities. Everything you do in the day, you log. Sleep, work, physical activity, household work. You log the time you do it, your experience of it, and the intensity. And you also log your pain levels. And after a week or so, when the data is fed into the engine, the artificial intelligence engine, this tool gets to know you as a patient, and you can start asking questions, and you can start getting advice based on your behavior, not on average chronic pain patient behavior, but on your specific behavior. And you can ask questions like, okay, I've slept today for 8 hours, I need to work for 5. What else can I do today without exceeding the pain level that I aim for? And you get a plan for the day, and you can increase your quality of life. Like I said, this is based on the same principles that is used in the clinic. It's called ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. So we are not inventing something new. We are building on something that already exists, but it's hard to handle for the human brain. It's hard for you to draw conclusions of what combinations of activities will affect your pain. But with Pain Trainer, you will get like a prolongation of your brain to help you plan your days. We are running clinical trials at 4 different sites. Here at Smart Rehab in Lund, in Boston, Newton Wesley Hospital, in Weill Cornell in New York, and in a hospital in San Diego, to prove that this really works for the patients. So we are approaching the clinical evidence that you have in the clinic, but also the high availability that you get from your mobile phone. So reaching out to a wider range of patients. So my last slide, what is the fit to your challenge? So from a societal perspective, like you outline, this will give these patients an increased activity balance and help them come back to work. From the individual perspective, everybody will get more aware of their diseases and thereby increase the quality of life. And from the healthcare sector perspective, this is clearly a shift from the pill to the patients. And also, in the future, the doctors can look in and look at all the patients and thereby plan and be more efficient in who they see, how often they see them. Maybe they can see more patients if they have more insight into the well-being of the patients while they are not at the visit. So by this, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anki, for
you.
a great presentation. Tuva, I would like to have you in the middle. So Tuva, what questions do you have for Anki?
Well, first of all, thank you for the pitch. It was really lovely, and I think you really hit the target when it comes to a real problem for a lot of people. So, being a physiotherapist of my own, I think this could really be something that you could recommend to patients to actually increase their empowerment. But,
Yeah, exactly.
So how far have you gone with the clinical trials? Where are you in the process? When do you think you have some kind of
well, the plan was to have them now, and we started off in San Diego. We have data from 8 patients there, but then this pandemic came along, so those clinics, all the clinics were closed. Of course, as you know. San Diego has opened up again now, and we're waiting for the others to open up again. What we have done meanwhile is that we have reached out to patient organizations and tested the tool on their members so that we have that type of data. And we will open up now before Christmas on a test launch through our webpage in Sweden to make it available to more patients, to the end user, to get more data, to learn how they work, how we can improve ourselves. And in parallel, we will have those clinical trials running. The thing is, we will have data at 6 weeks and at 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's very, very different from sort of normal clinical trials.
Yeah.
So hopefully in the very near future we will have those data.
And do you see the product where in the care chain? Is this for everybody, or is it something you would recommend from a pain clinic or primary care, or where do you see the fit into these?
Yeah, well, our first plan is to reach out directly to the end user through digital tools. And secondly, we are approaching already now private clinic in the US, and we are planning on reaching out to private clinics in Sweden. We're also having discussions with physiotherapist organizations.
Yeah.
That's the first line.
We have a question from the audience as well.
Okay, nice.
What is the level of compliance with Pain Trainer?
That's a really good question, and that is something that we are working really hard on. We are actually collaborating with the gaming company to get a more joyful experience, even though it's about your disease. I have no figures of compliance yet, since we are not that far. What we're doing, we're working on the tool to be easy to use and even fun to use to bring the compliance up. But I can't give you any figures, but we don't have that data yet.
Okay. One last question before we move to the next pitch. The question is, how is the appetite of doctors to suggest Pain Trainer as opposed to suggesting a pill, which is the traditional approach to managing pain?
Yes, traditionally you use the medication because that's the only alternative. I think we are moving into a paradigm shift, really, to move away from pills into digital tools. I'd say when we started this, when they started, I wasn't there then. They decided to visit 4 hospitals, the 4 hospitals that I mentioned, to see if they could get interest from maybe one of them to run the clinical trials. All of them signed up. We have agreements with all 4 of them. So that's a sign that you're becoming more aware to move away from the pills. Okay. So I think, yes, it will come. How long time it will take.
Yeah.
It's just a comment on that. Actually, we already today, when we have patients in primary care that want to have sleeping pills, the first thing is to offer them actually some kind of sleeping school so that they will pass that first before you do. So I think that the shift is quite in the mindset also of doctors
yes,
today.
And in the US, the opioid crisis is really huge. Yeah. So drug-free is really like a buzzword in the marketing, especially in the US.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Anki. Very interesting.
Thank you.
We will come back to more questions to Anki later on, but I'd like to invite our second pitching company who will be joining us virtually. His name is Johan Brun Hartman. He is the CEO of Unseen Bio, and he will be presenting to us virtually on his presentation titled Your Digital Gut. So Johan, I believe you're connected to Zoom.
Yeah, that's correct. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and we'll soon see you as well, I believe. Perfect. Johan, you are now on the screen. You're welcome to share your presentation as well. Take it away.
Thanks. Can you see my presentation?
Nope, not right now.
Sorry. And what about now?
Now we see it not in presentation view, but we see the slide.
Great. And now?
Yes, perfect.
Good. Thanks. Thank you very much for this introduction, and thanks for the opportunity for me to pitch. I'll be joining you virtually, which is a part of the new normal. My name is Johan Brun Hartman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Unseen Bio. And who are we in Unseen Bio? Unseen Bio is a digital health tech company that brings tests and data-based decision support to our customers. We are a broad team of co-founders who has founded this company based on the merit of preventive and prediction in healthcare, because we believe it's the most elegant way to intervene and to handle your healthcare. It's like when you have to prevent a meteor from hitting the Earth, the further away you can do it, the less impact you need to do. And that is the most benefit for all, for the users and the patients in general. We are focusing on the microbiome as it has shown potential over the recent years, and it still does in accelerating pace to empower this predictive and preventive approach. So our purpose is to unleash the health tech potential of stool data. The major problem that we target is IBS. It's a chronic disease, irritable bowel syndrome, and it entails and it encompasses the philosophy about prevention and prediction. As it's a disease that you do not die from, you live with it your whole life, and the whole game is about to prevent and predict flaring of symptoms in order to raise life quality. 16% of the Western population suffer from this, 2/3 of those women. You're not really sick when you have it, you're not really diagnosed, so you are, but you still have severe symptoms and affected life quality. There's very few treatments available, and the number of people affected are vast. So here we see a potential to do real impact and help people. And what is our solution? We call it your digital gut, and it's based on the user taking a fecal sample, then also collaborate in combining this with registering their own nutrition data. Sending it to us, we get it sequenced at a laboratory, and then we do our magic, as we call it. We do our data analysis, bioinformatics, and ship the results back to the customers. Here you can see an example of our fecal test that we have customized and developed ourselves and put together of the best available materials we find. This is not a fun experience, but we will lower the threshold for that as we work along. The user are able to access that data on My Unseen Bio. We want this online universe to make the users participate. We want them to be empowered, take ownership of their own chronic conditions, and be proactive about their health. It's a means of communicating with our users, and of course it must live up to all compliance with the regulatory and legal matters. On Unseen Bio, you'll access your digital gut. Your digital gut is, you can see it as a Google Maps for your gut. That is around this, everything is centered. And what you see here on the screen is actually a draft of how a styled microbiome map will look at us. It's illustrative. We go for simple communication, explanatory content, and also interactions. So people and users will be able to work with some of the information that you see here. And we're going to communicate with value and respect, so people do not feel sick. That's a very important part of our goal. Be aware that the user will not only get an app, it's a total system of empowerment where they provide fecal samples and metadata, and they will get personalized decision support and results in return. And can we do all this? Yeah, we indeed believe we can. Currently, most of similar solutions are based on 16S analysis and abundance calculations, but we go for a deeper full genome sampling and full genome analysis of the gut microbiome. So we do not only determine the species, also the functions. And with that combined with the input data from the user, we will build a digital copy of the individual gut microbiome for each user. We can add and remove bacteria and manipulate their function and determine the conditions they require to thrive. We can do this because our expertise is within metabolic model. So is this worth the effort? Yeah, we do indeed believe that it is. Because with our digital gut, the user will have a digital dashboard. Yeah, but they will be able to see how they react on different nutrition input and maybe see how they will react if some bacteria were less or more, and thus they can manipulate and adjust their microbiome in order to prevent symptoms from flaring or predict it. They will also be able to utilize the latest scientific inventions, scientific discoveries, and they can put them into actions right away. So this digital gut will help us move away from the current generic advice to personal advice based on your own microbiome. This we believe can make a great impact, not only for patients with IBS and other microbiome-related conditions, but also people in general, in order to create and maintain a good and healthy gut, which has proved to be impactful in several parts of the health of the human. Then also from a society point of view, this has the opportunity to lower the cost and the load on the healthcare system that comes from IBS patients, as they have significant more visits to GPs and specialists compared to healthy people. From a market,
Johan, if you could wrap up your presentation, that would be great.
Yeah, I will do that. So the market is vast. We will position ourselves with regarding to being a personalized device, a personalized approach. I will emphasize that we go for a business model where the user have to pay for themselves, because traditionally, as you also mentioned, we could see that in the public sector, prevention and prediction is not easy to get reimbursed. So we go for online sales through also ambassadors and private channels. We have collaborations with universities and hospitals, as we value scientific validity above all. Further, we create basically a tool for handling all microbiome-related conditions that the human body stands across. So thanks for your time, and feel free to ask some questions.
Thank you so much, Johan. Tuva, what questions do you have for Johan?
Well, I'm really interested in the shift towards how we in healthcare, like a healthcare provider, could interact with a company like yours and go from that consumer and private paying part. Do you have any ideas on how such a connection could look like with our clinicians or with our...
So you ask, how do we move away from a private payment model to a more reimbursed model? Is that?
Yeah. Do you have any ideas on how to get that collaboration? Do you have investigated that in different markets?
We have an idea that, and we have also we have collaboration with GPs, and we also have a collaboration with a hospital. And the thing is that in order to get reimbursed, you have to really prove that it works. And we are still in development phase. So if this system works, it could be a strong tool in the toolbox of a GP, but also for a clinical dietitian and also for a gastro unit in a hospital. So you have to really show effect of what you are doing, and when you have that, there is the possibility for a reimbursement model.
Yeah, so it's about creating the data to actually come to us and to our clinician and really have the proof for it. That's the strategy.
You
to
can
consumers
compare,
first.
exactly. You can compare it to a drug. When will a drug be accepted into the system? That is when you have proved that it's safe and it works.
Yeah.
And the same thing applies for us. As this is just from the beginning, it's safe because it's only food and supplements that we will work with in regarding to recommendations, maybe also medication data if that impacts the gut. But we basically work under the same requirements.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Johan, for your presentation, and we will continue the discussion later on. I would like to invite our third pitching company for today. We have Philip Peters, co-founder of ECORI, here with us. He will present on reducing heart failure rehospitalizations through non-invasive intracardiac pressure monitoring. Welcome, Philip. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining. My name is Philip Peters. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ECORI. So at ECORI, we are building one of the world's first non-invasive devices to be able to measure heart failure rehospitalizations through intracardiac pressure monitoring. And the problem today is that essentially 50% of heart failure patients will be rehospitalized within 6 months of being released from the hospital. As you can imagine, this is very costly, but what's most interesting about this fact is that around 75% of these rehospitalizations may be preventable. So the solution is intracardiac pressure monitoring. And intracardiac pressure is also known as the blood pressure that's inside your heart, inside the chambers of your heart. And it's been clinically shown to reduce rehospitalization rates by more than 40% and morbidity rates by more than 50%. And this was primarily shown during the Champion study, which used the invasive intracardiac pressure monitoring device called CardioMEMS, which is essentially a sensor that's put into the pulmonary artery. It's an invasive procedure and is rather expensive. So what we have done is we've essentially taken the CardioMEMS playbook and created a non-invasive device, essentially an extended smartphone case, which incorporates a unique combination of 4 different sensors and AI to accurately be able to measure intracardiac pressure of the patient. So as a heart failure patient, you would essentially wake up, place the device on your chest for 5 to 10 minutes, and then within a few seconds, both you and your cardiologist would receive the cardiac pressure that's inside your heart. And your cardiologist will then be able to take appropriate measures to change your medication or recommend lifestyle changes. So really the core principle of ECORI is to make lives of cardiologists and clinicians easier by giving them easy apps, and both web-based and smartphone-based, to be able to track what their patients are doing and how they're feeling. The other part of ECORI has to do with empowering patients to essentially live healthier lives. So within our smartphone app, we will incorporate several features, nudging features, to help patients stick to their medications, possibly help them change the amount of exercise they're doing or other type of risk factors, such as stress, that they can reduce themselves. In terms of clinical studies, we are starting a clinical study in January with 2 of Sweden's leading cardiology departments, which will be a study of more than 300 patients, where we will be looking at invasive right heart catheterizations to be our gold standard when we're training our AI models. And after that, of course, there's an efficacy study to prove reimbursement, basically using our device within a clinical workflow to show that we can actually reduce rehospitalizations. The regulatory pathways are pretty straightforward. So we're looking at a Class 2A pathway in Europe. And in the US, while there is no 510K or predicate device that we can rely on, we are looking at a de novo application. And based on similar companies, we think that we can gain a breakthrough device status to speed up the process of getting a Class 2 device status. In terms of reimbursement, the US is certainly further ahead than EU. And what's really neat for us is that there's reimbursement support for both remote monitoring and remote treatment management services. And what this means for us is there's essentially aligned incentives between those that will be doing the monitoring, and those that will be doing the treatment. So in our mind, we imagine that to be an easier sell to potential cardiologists in the US when we're pitching our product. In the EU, we're not as far ahead, but we can say that we're moving in the right direction. There have been a number of experiments and studies that have shown the benefits of remote monitoring. And in Sweden, there's certainly a communication about the importance of taking these preventive measures, such as exercise, particularly for heart failure patients. In terms of IP and patents, we filed 3 main patent families, of course, covering our core technology. Secondly, our AI methods that underlie the analysis of the data that we collect. But perhaps what we're most excited about is the application of our technology within a heart failure precision medicine context. And I'll get more into that later in the presentation. In terms of the team, there's 3 core members of the team. So I come from a background of quantitative finance, which is why I'm responsible for the AI and machine learning aspects of the company, as well as the product development. We have Jacob Gelberg, who has several years of experience running an app-based company, who does the app development and design. And we have Casper Woodett, who is in charge of our sales and marketing efforts, with a background from management consulting and strategy. On top of that, we are currently working with a network of over 12 consultants globally who help us with anything from electrical engineering to regulatory matters to IP and app development, etc. The long-term vision of Acori is essentially to become a automated AI cardiology service. And what that means is that we would like to train our AI models to not just monitor the patients, but also to automatically be able to adjust and administer cardiovascular treatments for heart failure patients. And top of that, we also see the potential, and this has been validated in a lot of academic studies, that we have the potential of being a full-fledged automated diagnostic tool for a number of cardiovascular diseases. So we're talking coronary artery disease, atrial fibrillation, aortic stenosis, and mitral regurgitation, as well as, of course, heart failure. In terms of discovering new precision medicine, that's really what we're perhaps most excited about, and we are at the moment the only tool that will make continuous monitoring of heart failure patients both affordable and feasible, which will allow sort of feedback loop to appear between when we are trying to discover new medications for heart failure patients that may work or may not work. So just to summarize, Acori is enabling remote heart failure monitoring through intracardiac pressure monitoring. And we have currently filed 3 patent family applications, and we're expecting our first granted patent within 3 months. We have a clinical study planned with 2 of Sweden's leading cardiology departments in January of 2021. And we estimate ourselves to be in a almost $3 billion market that's growing at 5% per annum. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Philip.
Thank you.
Tuva, over to you.
Over to me. Yeah, thank you for a really lovely pitch, and I know this area a bit more from my medical background, so I'm really excited to hear that you have covered a lot of the things and in your presentation regarding the business model and how to drive this further. So. How do you see the clinical trials? What kind of time perspective do you have in your company now? Because to me, I'm really excited about this, because the study is known for a long time about the intracardiac pressure. If you could actually monitor that in wearing clothes or having some kind of device, that could be great. That is known for a while, but you are actually doing it. Mm-hmm. So when can we actually use this? What's the time span for
When can we use it? I mean, that's so, again, in terms of regulatory guidance on AI is better in the US than it is in the EU. Yeah. The EU basically has none so far. So it really depends how we market ourselves as an AI device, whether we're going to have an adaptive AI that will continue to learn and become better and better as the years go by, or whether we have a static AI. If we choose the latter approach, I think we're estimating that we'll be able to go to market within 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay. Do you see any possibility are you interested in having more sites to test and try, or your clinical trial is already ongoing? Or?
Well, I mean, we're very lucky because Sahlgrenska University Hospital is the second biggest hospital in Europe, right? So they do have a lot of patients. And Lund University Hospital in the South Sweden is also very big. So we do have almost the vast majority of these type of patients will be able to do.
Because there is such a great potential to unlock for the patients that actually don't need to go to the hospitals. But from a society perspective, it's a massive potential to reduce the number of recurrent inpatient stays. So that's really I really think that's really great if you could pull it off. So.
We're going to continue this really exciting discussion, but I'd like to also invite Anki to come and join us, as well as Johan. I believe you're still connected. Where now we will address some of the perhaps larger questions around this space. And I think we've touched upon a few of it in our presentations with reimbursement, with appetites to using such digital tools by clinicians and patients and individuals. Perhaps the first question to you, Tuva, since you've been asking questions, so perhaps you would benefit from a question as well. Kape and Ramsay Santé is a global healthcare provider. You're in many different markets. And you mentioned that it's so important that we start looking more preventively. What has been your biggest challenge shifting to such an approach in your various markets? Do you see there's a common challenge, or it's quite different depending on where you're in?
No, I think we are back to the pole that we started with, that the reimbursement models for us as a care provider, they are not really there. So we need to really have quite big amounts of data to actually show the benefits so that we could incorporate it, or actually also work on our side with a lot of lobbying to the payers of our systems. We are under public contracts in most in most countries. So we are really in need of those. So we are trying to drive it both by looking into the market, trying to see what we can find, but also to work on the policies and the reimbursement payers actually in the different countries.
Obviously this is a really complex space, and there is a big paradigm shift that needs to happen. And so a similar question to our pitching companies as well. I know that financing is often, one of the biggest top of mind challenges, but aside from financing, if we think about working in preventive and predictive health, what would you say is your biggest challenge trying to stand out or succeed in that space? So perhaps Johan, just so we keep you connected, perhaps you can start answering that question. What do you see as your biggest challenge, aside from financing, when working within preventive health?
I think it's getting, as Tuva also said, nailing the customer group and nailing the product, creating the market fit, because there is a built-in paradox in doing preventive and prediction, because take you as an example, if you go to a fitness center very regularly and you create a very strong and healthy body for yourself, you eat well, then to all around you there's no problem, and you will never be able to quantify what you have prevented doing so. And so you have to, and that is hard to make both the system and the customers pay for, because you see, well, why should I pay for something that's not wrong? That's not broken. That is the major paradox of doing preventive and predictive healthcare. And that is why we have also chosen to work with the IBS group, as it is a group of patients that is not really considered patients. It's a garbage can diagnose that you'll get if nothing else fits. And it really affects people's life quality, and sometimes they do wish they had a diagnosis so they could be enrolled in the system. And if we can work with them and show that our predictive and preventive approach work with them, then they will have an incentive, and that could kind of open this approach. But you have to find someone who has a problem that you can measure. Because the other ones, then you will prevent something and you will never be able to prove it. And that is the general paradox of early interventions.
What are your reflections, Philip and Anki? Do you agree with Johan?
Definitely. Our greatest challenge right now is to find that group that can benefit from our tool. There are, in Europe and the US, 190 million patients suffering from chronic pain, they are not our target group, all of them. So we really need to work hard to find who will benefit the most. Start there, create data, and then we can move along to reimbursement and all that.
Philip.
I think for us it's more about regulatory clarity.
Okay.
Because we're basically there is none in Europe, and we're kind of at a limbo stage of whether we should forget about Europe for a while and go to the US straight away, or whether we should do both at the same time. So that's
right. So your go-to-market strategy.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. There's a question from our audience as well. To all pitching companies, what do you need in the next 6 months in order to succeed or move to the next major step in your company? Maybe let's start with Philip.
So we have a very well-defined 6 months. So it's a granted patent and early clinical results. And then with that, we will look to raise capital. And as you know, it's this industry, you get very, very little, and then you suddenly get a lot if you can prove that you have something.
Yep.
So that's essentially what we're looking for.
So clinical data. Yeah. Anki.
Money.
Okay, financing.
Yes.
All right.
When I joined the company, we planned a financing round, quite large, for the spring this year, and we performed it, but it wasn't the amount of money that we really needed. So we will have to start working on that now again, for reasons that we're all aware of. So unfortunately, I have to focus on that anyway. Yeah. And then it's clinical data, of course, to get the clinics up and running again so that they can start recruiting our patients.
Johan, what about you? What do you need in the next 6 months in order to succeed?
We have a pretty decent runway regarding funding, but of course you always have to keep that pot boiling. But we are starting our project with working with the hospital and their IBS patients, and it's very, very exciting to see how that turns out. And we are also going to finish up our modeling work up to summer, getting the digital gut up and running in its first version. So these things, of course, have to play out. We have to do what we say that we can do, and we have to see the clinical results that they are positive, and that will for sure open some doors.
Yeah. Thank you, Johan. So Tuva, you have heard from 3 really exciting companies, different phases, similar challenges. It's a lot about clinical evidence, understanding how to measure the benefits of a preventive approach. And Capio is, of course, a very important player and partner. What would you advise startups or companies wishing to partner with Capio in this space?
Well, it's about what we already talked about, nailing the needs of the clinical needs, or that's the number one, and then you need to find the scalable solution, and I think all of these that are presented today are scalable, but also finding the way to integrate into our systems, because as a clinician or working within, like in a care center, you don't want to have like 50 different apps and systems. So you really need to understand how to fit into the ecosystem of the healthcare. And that is actually something that we sometimes are trying to debate or discuss, or trying to meet companies to try to just tweak and squeeze a bit on what do you need to change to fit into our system? And on our side, what are our homework to do on collecting the data and how to work on that together? So we have a homework as a big company, but also to try to get the startups to map into our ecosystem. And that some of them are really great, and some companies have a bit of difficulties to just nail that part so that you could scale it.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point in terms of the clinician experience or the workflow. We want to avoid a situation where they're opening multiple windows with multiple different apps, but to have everything in one place. And then a bit of a teaser for one of our challenges later on, we're actually going to be addressing the integration of health-related data and to see if we can find a way forward in what you just described. No more questions from the audience, so I would like to thank our pitching companies, and I would also like to thank Tuva for